Hey, hello, what's up, and welcome into the latest episode of Geek Garage Goes to the Movies. This is number 9, David.
Yes,
this
it
is
is
the ninth one.
numero nueve, right?
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I know what things are.
Episode number 9. David's really excited for this one.
Yes.
I think probably a little too excited. I have asked that there be an extra 5 or so feet between us, just in case. I don't need any projectiles or anything.
Right, yeah. There's no telling what kind of body fluids might come out of me during this, because this is an episode that I have been planning since the inception of the podcast.
Yeah.
So I am very excited that this is happening right now.
For this episode, we're going to get into some mischief.
Some mayhem.
No soap, though.
No soap.
No soap. We have failed.
Right.
2 out of 3 ain't bad, though.
Right.
We will be covering the misunderstood masterpiece of Fight Club, which is turning 20 this month, September of 2019.
Happy birthday! Or, I mean, what is it, birthday or anniversary?
I guess.
Yeah.
It depends on... Yeah.
We slated the title for our Matrix episode like happy birthday,
and we shot our wad on that because
Matrix.
Honestly, that's the best joke we'll ever make.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's all downhill from there.
Right, yeah, referencing the intro to the Matrix birthday episode,
which you should listen to. It's a decent episode.
We had a lot of fun doing that one.
It was pretty good.
Yeah, or at least anyway, I did.
Yeah. So for this episode, like we said, we're going to talk about Fight Club, which is a pretty intense cult classic, I think. I think it's achieved that status. You can make some arguments that it's more than just like a cult movie, I guess, but it's definitely at one point was a huge cult movie, and probably in some ways still is.
It definitely checks off like the default boxes for. Or the boxes for a default like cult classic. You tip of what you think of when you think of cult classic movies. Like, it doesn't have a very big box office.
Right, it was like a box office failure.
Like, where like no one go and it doesn't make its money back.
But it has like a huge following.
Right, when it hits DVD.
Right.
Yeah.
This was definitely a big like DVD rental sort of movie. There's a lot that has been said about this movie. You could say that about every movie, really.
Right.
Any major movie, but there's been a lot said about this movie.
Especially Fight Club.
Yeah, it's been very divisive since it came out in 1999. David and I are going to focus in on some of those things. We're going to really focus in on why we consider it a misunderstood masterpiece. Mm-hmm. That's called alliteration.
Yes.
For all you English nerds out there.
Right. But it also works as a very good tagline for the episode.
It does. All right, so before we get into Fight Club, 2 quick notes. First, we have talked on the podcast a little bit in the past about GalaxyCon in Louisville in November. It's the 22nd through the 24th, I believe. Yep. That is something that we talked about we wanted to do. Mm-hmm. Well, now it is official.
It is.
We will be there in the artist or vendor alley. I'm not sure exactly what their setup is or what they call it.
Yeah, this will be our first time going, so it's a little new to us. It's a little
new, a little fresh, but I'm excited.
Yeah, it seems very legit. We looked at we couldn't figure out the attendance numbers,
right?
With GalaxyCon compared to MTAC, because MTAC's the one that we're most familiar with, and we couldn't find those numbers, but according to the Facebook likes, it has like double the amount of likes on Facebook than MTAC does.
I saw online, I think GalaxyCon last year had like 100,000 attendees estimated. That's pretty insane.
That's a lot.
We're going to need a lot of buttons.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have to order more. We will have a banner. We'll be there in an official capacity, so come say what's up. We'll have buttons. Tell all your friends to come say what's up. It'll be a fun weekend. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Second, as always, spoiler alert. Mm-hmm. We're going to be talking about some pretty heavy shit in this episode. But if you haven't seen this movie, it's been out for 20 years, so it's kind of on you at this point.
Right. Yeah. Shame on you for not seeing it.
If you're still worried about spoilers.
Right.
It's not like something that just came out. But
yeah.
David, you ready?
I am very ready.
Well, then hit that intro music and let's go.
Here we go.
Hey, y'all. One last quick note that we're going to have to inject here. You'll hear some background noise from David's son, Charlie. He had a little bit of a boo-boo, as they say, so David had to kind of hold him and get him to, stop crying and do all the fatherly stuff that, good dads do.
Right, so if you hear a little bit of background noise, that is from the children persuasion It's just my kids. So we never claimed to be a professional setup.
In fact, we have claimed the opposite.
Right.
On numerous occasions.
Yeah. So
you may also hear some panting. That's from a dog.
So if this is anyone's fault, it's really your own for tuning into this podcast.
Yeah. You should know by now. This is a waste of your fucking time. Right. And ours, for that matter. Anyway.
But it's all in good fun.
Yeah, I think we're going to get to it now.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
All right, Ted, you ready to talk about Fight Club? The club of fighting?
I would, but the first rule is that we're not supposed to talk about it.
You're right. We're already banned.
That's it. That's the whole podcast. See you, everybody.
All right. Now, I mean, to be fair, all the other people talked about Fight Club, and they still got to go. I mean, Tyler Durden even pointed it out. He's like, looks like a bunch of people have been breaking the first 2 rules of Fight Club, and everyone laughs, and
he gets all upset and shit.
Right.
I have a lot of thoughts on the rules. We'll come back to those. We'll circle back.
Yeah, we have some thoughts. But yes, so like we said before, there's a lot to say about Fight Club. The movie goes into a bunch of different topics, and so does the book. And just an FYI, there is a book, Fight Club, written by author Chuck Palahniuk, and it is we'll get into that. But yeah, both the book and the movie just have a lot to say about several different things, but in the for the sake of brevity and kind of being a little bit more concise and controlled, we are sticking to the thesis that is what has been commonly misinterpreted about Fight Club over the years. And we're not really like pointing the finger, or at least I'm not pointing the finger at people saying, oh, you totally missed the point. Like, did you get it? Did you get the point of Fight Club?
Because I'm going to be handling that.
Yeah. I don't feel secure in myself enough to be able to say that, because honestly, like, I watched Fight Club for a really long time and I didn't get it. But on the other side of that, I didn't pretend that I got it. Like, I was like, I think it's about this, and I just kind of philosophized about what it could mean for a while, until I talked to a couple people that were much more intelligent than I was, especially when it came to dissecting and analyzing film and books. And so with that major theme that Ted and I kind of realized is that there's a lot of misunderstanding to the movie and of course the book, that we thought that would make a good central thesis. So that is where that's the main point that we're going to be hitting on. But there, like I said, there's a lot of other talking points that we're going to get through. So Ted, you want to start us off with the first talking point?
Sure. Yeah, so my initial thoughts are pretty much what we've already discussed. I think Fight Club is a very good movie that has the misfortune of, generally speaking, having a very terrible fan base.
Yes, and that original fan base included Fred Durst, who at the time was a self-proclaimed piece of shit.
I feel like he's still a piece of shit, whether he proclaims it or not.
Right. Yeah. Who coincidentally, he is directing films now, but that's neither here nor there. I guess, okay, quote unquote, directing films.
Anyway, yeah, I think Fight Club, it's got a pretty shitty fan base.
Not everyone.
Not everyone, right. So obviously not every person, because I enjoyed the movie, right? So I don't think every single person that watches Fight Club is going to be like, Tyler Durden rules, man.
Right.
That's freedom. But it has the misfortune. Fincher was so good. He hit the goal so well in creating this like satirical film that people completely missed that it was a fucking satire.
Right.
And circled back around to like unironically backing these things, which we'll kind of get into. Mm-hmm. I don't think this is Fincher's best movie. I think that it's probably his most popular movie.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with it. I feel like when people think of Fincher, like I feel like Seven gets talked about a lot.
That's because Seven's a better movie. But
you think so?
Yeah, I know so.
That's another conversation.
That's another conversation. Like I said, I think this is broad strokes. Right, I'm not talking about critical acclaim. I'm talking about like the movie that most people associate with maybe Zodiac, but I think that for a large segment of moviegoers, this is the movie they associate him with, for better or worse.
Sure.
To his credit, he has said like, yeah, the people who like it are pretty terrible. Like his daughter came up to him after school one day and was like, "Oh, my friend, some other kid is like." Loves your work. He says Fight Club is his favorite movie. And he was like, you're not allowed to hang out with him anymore. So, +1 for being a good dad, because there's a good chance that was like a little terrorist in training wannabe.
Right.
Again, not everybody likes the movie is like going to try and blow up,
buildings,
Goldman and Sachs or whatever.
Right.
But I think this has some of his best work in it, even though I don't think it's his best movie overall. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I really like is when the narrator's in the hospital getting stitches after he's had his face pounded into the concrete.
Right.
The shot is composed. It kind of pans over from the doctor to the narrator, and then you see finally it focuses and like stops on in the frame is the narrator, the doctor's hands, and then Tyler's kind of in the back and to the side, really hazy and out of focus. And here's where the spoilers start. At the time, you're just like, that's a cool shot. He's in the background. It's a split focus. Mm-hmm. The reason is because the narrator is probably anesthetized. So Tyler would be hazy in his mind.
I never thought about that.
So he appears as hazy because the narrator doesn't have a firm grasp on what's happening. Because, again, he's definitely concussed, I would say, at the very least, and probably also has some sort of anesthesia going on while he's getting stitched up. And that's just a cool little like Fincher thing.
Yeah, yeah. That there's definitely a lot going on in that one scene, and plus to top it all off, it is that typical like you go back and watch it a second time, knowing that they are one and the same person. That's the whole the reveal at the end. You go back with that knowledge in your mind and you're like, oh, okay, like that's Tyler Durden talking to him, or the narrator talking to Tyler Durden, however you want to look at it. You saw him in the background thinking that was he was actually just hanging out in the background, but in real life it was just like you pointed out, where it was kind of just in the back of his mind,
right,
instead of actually physically being there.
Right, for sure. And like I said, there's a couple of those little cool like Fincher things. Another one is everybody, of course, knows about the like quote unquote cigarette burns of the little flashes of power that pop up throughout the movie,
which always remind me for some reason of Captain Howdy from The Exorcist. Like that was a thing. You remember that from The Exorcist? I mean, it happened a couple times. It wasn't like throughout the whole movie. And I know it's not. This doesn't happen throughout the whole movie for Fight Club, but for whatever reason, it just reminds me of that little thing.
It's a cool little thing.
Yeah.
Those glimpses aren't random. I've seen a lot of people that like they notice them. They're like, oh, he just randomly inserted him in there. I don't think he did.
Yeah, that would be way too coincidental for all the points that this movie makes, both subliminally and on surface level.
And everything that I've ever read or heard about Fincher is that like he's such a perfectionist, and he's like very demanding and like detail oriented. Maybe demanding was the wrong word, although I think it probably fits in some ways. But very detail oriented. He's like I said, a perfectionist. So the ones that really stuck out to me were all very formational, in the sense of the narrator forming the personality and the build of like what Tyler Durden is to him, like what he wants or what he needs Tyler Durden to be. So the first one that stuck out to me was when he's visiting the doctor and he's like, I need drugs, I'm in pain.
Right.
It's like, you don't need drugs, you want to see real suffering. Go to the testicular cancer
Remaining Men.
Remaining Men Together, thank you. And you see the glimpse of Tyler, and I think he appears with his arm on the like kind of leaning on the doctor.
Yeah, that sounds right.
There's that. Then when he's actually in the support group, and the doctor or the therapy leader, I'm not sure that he's a doctor, but the group therapy leader is talking about, I look around and I see brave men and da-da-da-da-da, and then he pops up again, they're saying next to the therapy leader. And then there's another one, the third one that I wanted to touch on was when he's in the office and he's making photocopies and he's just daydreaming about like anything interesting happening.
Right.
Tyler pops up. And again, those are all very formative glimpses of what the narrator is going to get out of Tyler as a role model in a way.
Right.
Speaking of the group therapy leader, that comes up again later when Tyler's giving his own speech to fight club attendees, where he's like, I look around and I see the bravest men and this and that. And again, it's just formative to what the narrator wants or expects or needs out of. Let me stop myself. So when I say needs, the narrator needs this, I'm not. If the character of the narrator were a real person, he would need like psychotherapy, right? I'm saying what he thinks he needs.
Right.
Just so that I don't get lumped in with the rest of these jackasses on the internet that are like, Tyler Durden, man. You know, I just thought, I watched it the other night again, and I don't know how many times I've seen it. I haven't seen it for a while. I haven't watched it in several years, but I know I've seen it probably 10 or 15 times, and I was just like, man, Fincher, you motherfucker. You know? He's so good at this.
Right, yeah, he's quite the cinematic genius.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought I really for some reason never gave the flashes of Tyler Durden a lot of thought. I mainly just obviously it's a thing.
Right.
I thought it was kind of neat, but I never kind of delved deep into the meaning behind it, mainly because I focused my thinking efforts on other things that caught my attention more.
And I mean, like I've said in the past, I don't like to assume intent.
Right.
You know, because I don't know. Art is subjective. I don't know what the creator, in this case the director, you know, wanted to accomplish with that. I can say, like you said, I think they're too coincidental.
Yes.
To not mean something.
Yes.
Then that's kind of what I'm landing on with. I think that's all very formative to what the narrator wants or thinks he needs.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into one of the big things that is kind of misunderstood about the movie, or not kind of, is misunderstood.
Right.
Is the violence aspect. Yeah. So it is. I don't know, what would you say the most popular misconception when it comes to the violence? Like, for me, it was like people thought that they were like they put, you know, all this violence in there. You know, some would say it's not too violent, but some would say it's, you know, overtly violent, and they thought that it was just violence for the sake of being violence. Or
right. It's really interesting because if you look at the violence in it, it's, I don't want to say tame, because I mean it's pretty gritty, like guys beating the shit out of one another, right?
The physical violence, the visual element isn't too bad, but the sound design is what fucking sells the fights.
And in the commentary, I think it's I want to say it's Edward Norton. It's been a long time since I've listened to the commentary for this, but he made the point, is like, if you compare our movie to like Raging Bull, you know, Scorsese's boxing movie about Jake LaMotta, like the violence, the visual portrayal of the violence isn't that different. I mean, it's just guys punching one another. In Raging Bull, of course, they're wearing like boxing gloves because it's all, for the most part, at least the violence is contained to the ring. Whereas in Fight Club, it's like bare knuckle underground. But it's still like, I mean, Raging Bull has a lot of blood in it. There's a lot of really famous shots where like De Niro gets hit in the side of the face and he turns his head in slow motion and like the blood flies out. So it's in some ways it's even kind of like more violent than Fight Club. But Norton goes on to say, he's like, but the just the meat packing sounds that just he's like, that is what makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah, just, I mean, as a little side note, so if you go check out, if you have the I think it's the 10th anniversary Blu-ray, that I believe that's the one that you got too. Yeah. But if that's the one that you're able to find, it has just a bunch of different special features, and has a couple different commentary tracks. And one of the special features that I just checked out the other day, and I was, you know, we were texting back and forth, and I was like, did you watch the thing about the sound design? And you were like, no, I haven't gotten to it yet. And I was like, yeah, well, apparently they took like dead chicken carcasses, and they filled the chicken with walnuts, I believe they said, and took it into a location like that, like underground basement type of situation, and like hung them and beat them with baseball bats, which like it sounds violent, but I mean they're just beating dead.
It's kind of comical in a way.
It is like, and they made the sound designer who was giving these trivia factoids was kind of illustrating it as very comical, how it got to that point, because they were at the point where they were adding in the sound design, and they were talking about how they wanted it to be and what they wanted to achieve with it. And Fincher was like, no, fuck all those like default Foley noises that everyone else uses that we have access to. Like, let's go make our own.
And it's effective.
Yes.
Yeah, it's super effective.
Yeah, it definitely helps to sell the violence aspect. But kind of, getting back on track of, the misconception of the violence aspects.
A lot of people are like, it glorifies the violence, and I don't. No, I don't think it does.
Yeah, it's that's not really the point of the violence at all. What I get out of the violence is that it's part of the therapy, because like up until they formed Fight Club, he was going to all these different therapies in order to kind of feel like he belongs to somewhere, that he finally has people that listen to him instead of, like Marla says, just waiting for their turn to talk. And so he's they've created Fight Club, and instead of talking, they just fight it out. And it's not fighting because they're angry. When you think about two people fighting, you think about an actual physical, emotional, verbal altercation that transpired / is transpiring, and you think of just very much like negativity, hatred, and that's not the case at all. And with this, like they're guys kind of like rediscovering who they are by breaking down their both physical and spiritual, mental forms. Like that's kind of what I get out of the violence aspect. And once again, it's all subjective, but that's kind of what I get.
I definitely agree with it's sort of their form of therapy, right? So if you think about it, like contextualizing the characters, right? So they're all, like beaten down. Tyler's like, he has the point where he's like, our war is a spiritual war. We do all these jobs chasing shit we don't need for people to impress people we don't like and all this. He's like, so these guys are like beaten down. They probably feel empty. And this allows them to take control in some way, right? Like it allows them to sort of take control of their life. And like, this is a positive choice they make. And I don't mean positive in the sense of like, this is good for me. This is a positive thing. I mean a positive choice in the sense of like, I'm taking control. I'm making this choice, right? It's not a negative choice where like it's forced upon you, right? And that allows them to feel anything. Yeah. Pain is a very formative, very important thing to feel, right? So it gives them that opportunity in some ways.
Right. Regarding the masculinity aspect is that people, they take it at very surface level, similar to the violence, where they look at the masculinity and they're like, oh, a lot of these guys, especially Tyler Durden, they're very well built. They're supposed to be the true representation of masculinity. That they're supposed to be like the bannermen for what true, like what it really means to be a man, and that's not really accurate.
It's a very consumerist approach to what masculinity is, what manhood is. And there's even a line in the movie where they point out the underwear ad. And he's like, is that what a man looks like? And the funniest thing about that is that like, that's Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
He was the model for that.
Yeah, I always that, and I thought that it was just funny in general that I was like, well, that's rich, Tyler, coming from you, a very well sculpted human being.
It looks like he's carved out of fucking marble.
Right? Yeah, like pointing out self. What do you say? Self preservation is masturbation.
Self improvement is masturbation.
Yeah, self improvement is masturbation. But self destruction, however.
Yeah.
One thing that I think really sets the masculinity thing in place as far as the true intent is Tyler's line, like how much can you know about yourself if you've never been in a fight? And while that's true when you think about if you've never been in a fight, like how much do you know about yourself if you've never been in a fight? But I think it's the intent of that question is meant more on like this broader scale of if you've never, I don't know, if you've lived so comfortably, I guess, for the longest part of your life, where you're so complacent. How much do you know about yourself if you don't get out of your comfort zone and all this?
No, I think that's a fair point. In terms of masculinity and how it's represented, I mean, it's very easy to point to Brad Pitt as one of the two main characters in the film and say like, oh, well, he's supposed to be the banner person for masculinity, to steal your phrase. But if you look, like, really, the men involved in Fight Club kind of run the gamut.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure.
You definitely have the kind of, like, more...
really scrawny dudes.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, really scrawny guys. Like, Jared Leto's character, Angel, is kind of like the pretty boy, so to speak, Then
you have, like, the priest, who's, the
best character is the priest.
Right, yeah.
But then you also have, like, Bob, who is...
He has
like,
bitch tits.
Masculinity to its extreme, where he's like shooting. He's like, I don't remember what the drug is. He's like, it's for fucking horses. I was shooting that shit up,
right?
Because he was a professional bodybuilder. You know? So it's like it runs the gamut from like the scrawny guys all the way to like the extreme of this guy who's shooting up fucking horse steroids to achieve some elusive perfection. I think it's just really easy to point to and be like, oh, well, this is what all men want to be. But it's not a representation of what like actual masculinity is, what actual manhood is.
Right.
But that kind of goes back into like the themes of guys who were raised to not know how to be successful men in society.
Yeah,
and there's that scene where they're talking about like their fathers and their father's advice, and it's basically just like empty words. And they're like, I have no idea how to be a fucking man. One of the whole points of the movie, or one of the whole points it satirizes, is like the idea of being a man that doesn't know his place in society, doesn't know how to be an effective man, doesn't know how to be an effective man in society. The author of the book, Chuck Palahniuk, has discussed this. He was on. I think it was Joe Rogan's podcast talking about one of the things that really he tied into it, and then the movie obviously took from, was Joseph Campbell's theory of the secondary father, which essentially is just, if you're fortunate, you're born, you have your biological father, right, that like loves and raises you, and then at some point you have to rebel against that as you become your own man, right. The idea of the secondary father is like essentially a role model that you take, or a person you take as a role model, right. A healthy version of this would be like a coach,
right,
or an ostensibly healthy version of this would be like a coach, if you're religious, maybe a pastor, right, but someone that's going to help you navigate the world in a way that your father did not, or maybe cannot.
Sure.
For the narrator, he forms this really extreme version of that in Tyler, where even Tyler's like, I'm all the thing, you created me. I am different from you in all the ways that you want. I look the way you want to look, I fuck the way you want to fuck, etc. I thought that was a very interesting perspective, and I've read a lot of Campbell before. I'd never read that from him, and I was just like, actually makes a lot of sense, and it sort of ties into sort of his overall, Joseph Campbell's overall like philosophy on things. And if you've never read any of his stuff, just to anybody that's listening, I highly recommend it. That guy was a fucking genius.
What has he written?
He's written a lot. He was a philosopher and I guess like a religious studies scholar in some ways. He did a lot of like religious comparisons. His biggest contribution, arguably his biggest contribution, was the monomyth, which is, if you look at all religions, they essentially boil down to like a single case of mythology, right? And so a lot of this ties into like psychology, right, as well. And it's like, he was so much smarter than me, it's like almost comical that I'm even like trying to coherently talk about this,
right?
But look at like the hero's journey. That's something that he devised.
Okay.
That's probably something else that people are familiar with hearing, particularly if you've ever done any like creative writing. The hero's journey is something that you learn about.
Yeah.
The monomyth, which is probably the biggest thing, but like there are times where I've read some of his stuff and I'm just like, is this the smartest motherfucker that ever lived? Like, I'm not even kidding. And it's just, that was just like an aside that I didn't intend to go down, but I highly recommend checking out any of his stuff.
Well, I mean, it's definitely related to our current material.
Sure.
But yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of that. That is a very heavy common theme in the book and of course the movie is this idea of father figures, and it's brought up several times, and I go back and forth with what my favorite scene is, but on certain days this is my favorite scene, and it's the scene where he gives him the kiss chemical burn on his hand, and he says, if our fathers were models for God and our fathers abandoned us, what does that tell you about God? And I think that's kind of a point where the movie picks up, like, just goes from 0 to 60 on the whole father aspect of the movie, where it's kind of been discussed lightly and loosely interpreted, and he's just fucking like, he fucking hates you, he doesn't like you, we don't need him.
I'm actually glad you brought this up, because in rewatching it, and then of course in reading the notes and the blocking that we had for the episode, I saw that you'd written it in, and I was like, yes, I'm glad you want to talk about that, because it really ties in, as all good narrative structures do, to the theme overall, right? So in a sense, he's comparing the father with God. If your father bailed, what does that tell you about God?
Right.
In all honesty, he probably fucking hates you.
Yeah.
And in the big picture sense, like, that's just like pseudo-philosophical drivel. It means nothing.
Right.
Like, it's garbage.
It's not meant to be taken on surface level.
Right.
Regarding your father or God.
Right.
Sorry, go
but
ahead.
For the narrator, that's like exactly what he wants to hear, or what he perceives that he needs to hear. There's a scene earlier than that where he's talking about his father, and he's like, I knew my father, but I didn't. He left when I was 6. And, he went off and was like, started other families. And there's that funny line from Tyler where he's like, that fucker was setting up franchises, which that just tickles my funny bone every time. But
yeah, it's a good analogy.
Yeah, but it's like, that's what he wants to hear, is like, your father was a piece of shit. It's okay to admit that.
Right.
It's basically what, it kind of ties into that. Or like, you need to understand that.
Yeah.
Right? Which again ties into the whole, like, I can't call my father for advice because my father was a scumbag. I can't take advice from him. I don't know how to be a man because he never showed me, because he didn't know how to be a man.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So I guess we'll just keep going with favorite scenes.
Yeah.
I think my favorite scene is probably the fight with Lou. Fight is a strong word. It's basically Tyler getting the shit kicked out of him by the bar owner, Lou.
Yeah.
Because it just represents, like, it's so representative of just the nihilistic mindset.
Yeah.
Of like,
come on, Lou, we really like it here.
On the one hand, it's like super nihilistic, where he's just like, I'm willing to let you beat the shit out of me for this.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter that you're beating the shit out of me. But on the other hand, like, it shows a very severe dedication, which plays really well in showing you that all these guys are watching this happen, and he's just like, no, it's fine. You know, he backs them off.
Right.
And they see that, and they're like, man, this guy's willing to let himself get fucking rocked.
Right. Yeah.
For this.
Yeah, and then the other guy's pulling out his gun, and they're like, no one brings guns to Fight Club.
Right. And then, but after it happens, what happens? They all gather around. The guy lights his fucking cigarette for him.
Right.
Like, that's the moment when you're like, holy shit, they worship this guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's just super effective. And then that you know, of course, flies really into, like, Project Mayhem.
Right.
Later on and all that. But I just think that to me, really is where it turns from, like, hey, these are guys hanging out, you know, on a Saturday night in an underground boxing club. And then it goes into, like, deification. This is a movement. Bad scene. Yeah. It's not my favorite scene, but it's definitely one of my favorites. It does, like, in a very simplistic way, packs a lot into that one scene, because, like, that it's not like they're like, okay, he beat the shit out of me, let's continue with Fight Club. Like, he just delves, just kind of divvies out the homework. And like, that's pretty much the only homework that you get as far as, like, a montage goes. But, you know, he's like, your homework is you're going to start a fight and you're going to lose. And and that was this last time around, that was when I realized that I don't know the actor's name, but I should, because I'm a big fan of Mindhunter. But the guy that sprayed the priest that was outside, like, the auto shop or tire shop, whatever it was, he's actually going back this last time and rewatching it. I didn't realize how much he is in the movie, especially the when, like you said, from this scene onward, like, when it's very heavily prevalent.
Yeah. And he's the one that says, you know, I get it now. In Death, a member of Project Mayhem has a name. His name was Robert Paulson. And so that's when I realized that he's the older FBI agent in the behavioral unit, aside Jonathan Groff's character. But anyways, for the longest time, my favorite scene was the Raymond K. Hessel holdup scene. It's a relatively short scene. Going back and looking at it, it's not very long, but it was I always felt like it was such a very powerful message, and it kind of, I don't want to say it shied away from the rest of what the movie is trying to say, because obviously the movie and book are trying to say a lot of different things, or, you know, similar things, a lot of things, but this one kind of came out of left field, I guess, as far as...
See, I disagree.
Okay, so...
Let me let you finish before I say I disagree, though.
Okay, so it didn't... Bad choice of words. I didn't feel like it came out of left field, but I wasn't expecting that. It was very Tyler Durden-esque, what he did, of the idea of pulling this dude out of, you know, the convenience store to the back, you know, telling him that he's gonna kill him, and after all that, you know, he lets him go, he takes his license, and after all that, there's not even any guns, or not even any bullets in the gun. And he's like, why would you do that? And he says tomorrow he's gonna wake up and he's gonna have the best tasting breakfast that you and I will ever have. Okay, so the last thing I think we had slated to get to before final thoughts is discussing the book a little bit, but only in the sense in how it relates to the movie. And I think the biggest thing that we could discuss, or the most important thing, is its success in being adapted to the screen. And sorry, I know that was very eloquently put, but yeah, I feel like personally, and it's hailed as one of those adaptations that is very successful in terms of staying true to its source material. If that is the guiding light that we're going by, is, you know, staying true to the book, then I feel like, and like I said, you know, several other fans of both the book and movie do feel the same way. Of course, there are some differences between the two. Case in point, the ending. The ending was in the book is different than the movie, and I believe, Ted, you're a little bit more read up on the differences between those two.
So, I mean, there's going to be there are some minor differences. The two big differences that I recall are the ending, for one. The second one is how he actually meets Tyler, quote unquote meets Tyler. Mm-hmm. In the book, he meets him at a nude beach.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's that weird sequence where he's talking about, like, he has that birthmark on his foot, and he hides it in the sand because a lot of people think it's cancerous, and it's not.
Right.
And that's where he meets Tyler, is on the beach, which is, it's not bad, really. Like, it, okay, I think the movie does it better. This is one of the few times where I'm like, the movie is superior to the book.
No, it definitely, and Chuck Palahniuk goes on record saying that I don't think he says that the book or the movie is superior, but he definitely said that he loved the movie, the adaptation, and he thought that the movie actually excelled in certain points that the book not necessarily failed, but the movie just did better.
I just think the changes, like I said, the two big changes of the meeting and then the ending make more sense in the movie. Right. I think that the ending makes a lot more sense, but I think the meeting is more powerful in the movie because it shows how fractured the narrator is. Right. Right. And then it's like, and it just fits in with his character, like traveling all around, and like, if you woke up, could I wake up as a different person? Right. You know, which of course he literally does in a way. Yeah. And then I think the ending makes more sense in some ways. I have a lot of problems with the ending too. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of problems, but I do have some things that I'm like,
It did. I don't know if my problems probably don't align with yours, but my problems for a long time were I didn't understand if they blew up and they all died at the end, or if they were in a building, one of the only buildings left standing in that area, right? Because you know, like you see just building after building. It wasn't just like two buildings. It was like a bunch of them that just dropped. And of course, after the last one drops, the last thing you see before, you know, it cuts to credits is the shakiness. But really, that's just supposed to be the look of the film reel reaching the end of the reel.
Yeah. So I don't think that the building that they're in is rigged to blow.
If we're speaking from the continuing source material from Fight Club to the graphic novel series, then it definitely does not, because it's 10 years later, and, you know, Marla and Tyler, you know, they're married and they're basically living a boring married life, and it's actually pretty entertaining. But yeah, I mean, if we're, you know, sticking to the timeline of this, the movie, the book / movie, well, I guess just the movie in this instance, leading up to, you know, the graphic novel series, then it is very evident that they did not die.
Yeah. I just think based on the movie, like, so this is going to be blasphemous to anybody that likes books more than movies, and I'm in that camp in some respects, but the sequels to the book have no bearing on the movie to me. The canon of the movie ends with the movie, right? I don't think they die because he says we have a front row seat to view it, not to be a part of it, to view it. Right?
That makes sense.
That's a distinct choice of words.
Yeah.
Right? Also, it would just be stupid. And that's one of my big problems with the ending of the book. He's like, we're going to kill ourselves. We're going to be martyrs in doing this. And it's like, that that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Right.
You know?
But like at the same time, and this is also worth noting, I feel like, and again, I didn't want to get too like book heavy with, specifics pertaining to the book. I just wanted to discuss the book, pertaining to the movie. But Chuck Palahniuk, his Fight Club actually wasn't the first book that he wrote. He wrote Choke first, I believe. Isn't that right? That he wrote. Okay, so yeah, I was just trying to get some confirmation, but I'm relatively certain that he wrote Choke first, and he brought it to either his agent or a publisher or someone to look at, and they were like, "You're a fucking joke. Like no one in their right mind would publish this." And so his thought process was, okay, well, if I write the kind of stuff that's not going to get published, then I might as well just have fucking fun with it. And so he basically decided to go even harder in the paint and and write Fight Club. And so he wrote what, just as like a rebellious kind of act out against the publisher that rejected Choke, where he was like, okay, well, I'm gonna bring you something else, but it's gonna be even more fucked up. And so he brings them Fight Club, and they're like, oh well, we'll publish this. And I thought it was very interesting how how Fight Club got published was, he wrote something even more messed up than his first book, or quote unquote first book, and that's what ended up getting published. So yeah, that's I think that's pretty much all we had as far as the book pertaining to the movie.
Yeah.
Do you want to get into your final thoughts?
Sure. Is it an effective satire? Because it's supposed to be satirical, right? But is it effective?
Right.
It's really almost too good,
right,
at being a satire, because so many people just completely miss the fucking point, as we've discussed.
Mm-hmm.
So should that count for or against how the film is perceived, how it's critiqued?
I would say for, because...
Okay. I mean, that's not a rhetorical question. I legitimately don't know. Like, I think a very compelling argument could be made either way.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I think so too.
But you have to look at like why Tyler as a character is seductive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do we want to listen to him? Or why does the narrator, I guess, want to listen to him? Why do so many people want to listen to him? Well, one, he looks like fucking Brad Pitt.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Handsome people, beautiful people tend to have people flock to them.
Right.
Right? So that's one. He does kind of raise some good points to a point. Right? Like, and then he goes way off the fucking deep end, and it's like, maybe we should not talk to this person anymore. But he has a lot of lines that center around, or that center on, this is your life, and it's ending 1 second at a time, which kind of plays into the medieval Christian theory of like memento mori.
Right.
You will die. Know that you will die. He has some critiques of consumerism, which I think are valid. And then I think, as we kind of discussed very briefly at the beginning of the podcast, are very prescient,
right,
to what is going on and increasingly going on with regards to like politics and society now.
Yeah.
And I think those are very seductive, because it's like a lot of people can relate to those.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not saying Tyler's a good character. He's full of shit. He sucks, and he should not be listened to. But,
right,
a good point's a good point. Even a stop clock is right twice a day, right?
Yeah.
Again, these are all grossly overshadowed by his means and ends.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying he's a good character. I'm not saying he's someone you should follow. And it really disgusts me, truly deeply disgusts me, that you can go online and find people that like pseudo cosplay in a way as Tyler Durden, where it's like, Tyler says this, Tyler's a fictional fucking character. You're a clown. Get a fucking hobby.
Sure.
Cosplay was the wrong word, because I think, cosplay is a legitimate exertion of,
right,
creativity and design. Just, I mean, I'm trying to use it as a pejorative, where it's like people like role play, I guess.
Sure.
In a way. I just think I think it's dumb, and
at the very least, take his
take him
message too seriously.
Yeah, and that's fucking clown shoes.
Yeah, which I guess is a great way to circle back to our overall thesis of a vast
You're all
majority.
Terrible disappointment.
I mean, I was trying to put it into not so
blunt and mean-spirited, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Ultimately, my thoughts on this movie are just like, it's good art because it causes discussion and it reflects something about ourselves or about society at large.
Right.
I asked, should it count for or against the movie that it's good at what it does? And I think it should count for it. I agree with you, because it's like it really exposes like, oh shit, this is a real thing that motherfuckers should be worried about.
Yeah.
So I think it should count for it.
Yeah, I'll start off my final thoughts by echoing a lot of that and kind of filling in some. You weren't asking rhetorically, you were truly asking, and I feel as it seems like you do, that it is effective in its satirical nature, and how you is it too satirical where it's all of a sudden not good anymore and not effective. But you look at what you look at some ineffective satire, and I guess a semi-good example we could use is Velvet Buzzsaw that we did a couple months ago. And while not a terrible movie, it wasn't great either. It was fun. It was fun to watch, but we talked at length. And if you want to go back and listen to that one, that I felt like, since it was one of our first episodes, I
think that was our first episode. That wasn't even a Ghost to the Movies episode, I don't think. I think that was just the first episode we did together on Geek Garage.
That sounds right. Yeah. Either way, it was a lot of fun to do, despite the our less than positive thoughts on the movie. My point was that Velvet Buzzsaw is a less than fantastic example of what satire in film should be. If your point is to make a satirical film, and so if you put that up against Fight Club, I feel like there is a stark contrast in overall quality when it comes to making a satirical film. And although it may seem in certain lights that Fight Club is overachieving in a satirical sense, then I probably wouldn't disagree with that. But I'd say overall it is relatively successful, and in some cases over successful. Well. For my overall thoughts, aside from your own, and echoing what you said, is that I have racked my brain and to decide if this is not just my favorite Fincher film, but my favorite film of all time, because that's a bold statement for a lot of people to say. Most people, especially film nerds. And I really think that Fight Club is my favorite movie. Oddly enough, I don't know if it's my favorite Fincher film. I'd have to kind of reassess, and I don't know if logically that makes sense.
It does not.
No?
No.
Really?
Really.
Well,
I'll be the one to disagree with you, because it's not Fincher's best movie, and it's probably not even on like my top 30 favorite movies.
Well,
it's good. Whatever. It's definitely good, though.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to do shit that doesn't suck?
Yeah.
All right, so for this week, I'm going to go off the grid a little bit. I watched a movie called Cold World about a week ago, I guess it's been.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one.
It's definitely not something that would be in your wheelhouse, because it's good.
You know what? We're gonna have to cut this.
Yeah. It's a Polish film by Paweł Pawlikowski. He won he won at least one Oscar for a previous work he did called Ida, I believe it was.
Okay.
This might have been nominated for Best Foreign Film, but Roma won, I believe, last year's Foreign Film Oscar. So
yeah,
it was nominated. He won Best Director maybe at Cannes for this movie. It is fucking incredible.
Okay.
It is in Polish. Predominantly, I think there's a couple other languages spoken, but it's subtitled. So if you're not into that, get over it.
Right.
Because you're missing out on a lot of world cinema that's awesome. This one in particular, it's a love story. I wrote a review for it on Letterboxd, and it was just very short to the point. It was just it's about star-crossed, doomed love and the pieces of ourselves that we lose in fighting the world. Mm-hmm. It's just like high art, man. I don't know what else to say. It's fucking beautiful.
So it's recent, right?
This came out last year.
Okay. I will check it out just to spite you.
It is on Amazon Prime. It was an Amazon Studios movie. I don't know that they were the original backers or if they maybe just bought the distribution rights.
Sure.
But it is on Prime. It's also getting to keep it very on brand for myself. It's also getting a Criterion Collection release. Like I said, very on brand for me.
Yes.
But man, it's about 90 minutes. So for those of you that are like, I don't know, it's an hour and a half.
Right.
All right. If you can sit through fucking 12 hours of Avengers fan service, you can deal with a 90-minute movie that's actually fucking good.
Right.
But
I'll have to check it out.
It's one of my favorite movies that I've watched recently. It's fan-fucking-tastic.
Cool. Yeah. I'll have to check it out.
So what do you got?
So I got the new season of Mindhunter. Came out a couple weeks ago, and it is relatively in line with keeping in theme with the first season. So, the first season is all about the FBI forming the behavioral science unit, coining the term serial killer, going around interviewing serial killers, trying to understand the idea of or the mindset of a serial killer. That way they can relay this information to the FBI and other, police forces and kind of nip it in the bud, before it becomes an issue. And so that was kind of the premise of the first season. And while they do a little bit of that in the second season, it kind of takes a back seat, although they do have some big names. Charles Manson is probably the biggest name. That all kind of takes a back seat with the second season, and the main story is them going to Atlanta to help with the Atlanta Police Department and the the Atlanta Monster. I think that's what they nicknamed him. He was supposed to be responsible for almost 30 child kidnapping and murder cases, and I don't want to give anything away, but that was the main part of the second season. And so a lot of people didn't like the second season because it was kind of a shift as far as direction goes from the first season. But I really liked it because although it stayed true to its original fashion, it kind of broke away and did this little thing, and they actually worked on a real case from history. So keeping on brand with Fincher, he did a really good job in this instance of working in real true crime history into this storyline, where some of it is fictional for the sake of making a decent script and storyline and all that, but he's working in actual historical events from true crime. But yeah, I highly suggest it. If you watch the first one, I'd say watch the second one. Let me know what you think. I'm curious. I fucking love Mindhunter and I love Fincher, if you haven't figured that out by now. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. And Ted and I want to hear your thoughts on Fight Club. Just in general. Yeah. We did a little post. It was definitely late on our part. We should have made the post a couple days ago. We
did get a little bit of a response. So on Instagram, Evan Dillingham called us out hard,
right,
for talking about Fight Club.
Thanks a lot, Evan. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Dick.
No, what did he say?
Like, first of all, you've broken the rules.
Right. I was like, okay, Evan, you're not an asshole. You're not going to contribute to the conversation. You're gonna call us out.
No.
Evan, he's actually a big Trekkie, so he might.
Man of culture.
Right. So he so you might eventually find his way as a guest on the podcast, on the main show.
Speaking of social media, you can find us on all the major social media sites by searching for Geek Garage or Geek Garage Pod. Yep. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good shit. We have a website, geekgaragepodcast.com. Mm-hmm. Come check it out. We have blog posts when we actually stop being lazy pieces of shit and contribute to the podcast. You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd, Letterboxd, which is a self-described social media site for film nerds or film lovers, I think. It's really cool. I like it a lot. I'm at Ted is on Fire on all of those things, on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Come say what's up. Drop us a line on any of those. Come see us at GalaxyCon in November. Yeah. We're very stoked on this. This is a big step for us.
It is. We're very excited.
Don't make us have spent all this goddamn money in vain.
Yeah, I was going to say earlier, silver lining for a KaiCon being relatively unsuccessful, we have all those buttons left over.
Yes, we don't need any more, but no, we're going to need more buttons.
Yeah, we'll still need to buy some, but we don't need to buy as many because we can buy and we can buy candy and stuff, and not to sound like weirdos that are like, come by our booth, we'll have a candy for you.
I don't know, that booth that was next to us at a KaiCon, they got a lot of shit.
Yeah, they were stunting.
They were stunting hard.
Yeah,
I wish I could remember who they were to give them credit for it, but they're just those people.
They were
next
that
to us
con
at
in Indiana, right?
Yeah, that's all their names for me.
Cool. Yeah,
that one guy gave me like shrimp chips from Japan. They were actually really good.
Nice.
Yeah, he was a nice guy. I'm just like, I don't know who you were, bro, but thank you on the podcast. He's not listening. None of this matters.
Right.
Come see us at GalaxyCon. It'll be fun.
Yes.
We got some other stuff coming up that we're working on in terms of both conventions and just podcast episodes. If you have any ideas, anything you want to share with us, like I said, give us a shout on social media.
Yeah, we're always looking for suggestions, movies.
Are creatively bankrupt.
Yeah, we, even though we do a relatively decent job of coming up with topics, at least we think so, we always do not mind having help, especially, when we can really get listeners involved with what they want to hear. I mean, that's the whole point of doing is putting out content that people want to listen to. So, I mean, it's not fun if we're just talking about always 100% of the time what we want to talk about.
For sure. Also, if there's any type of, I guess, merchandise or tchotchkes or kitschy stuff that everybody likes, if you'd like to see us do like koozies or t-shirts, we have the buttons already, so we're one step ahead of you.
Right.
Sex dolls. I don't know if we can customize those. That might be out of the wheelhouse. Yeah, that's a weird example. I don't know why I went straight there.
Right.
But anything that that any of our listeners would be into, drop us a line for that. We're always open to suggestions. We'll go from there. I think that's all I got. David, you got anything else?
That is it. That's. I think we said it all.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. Well. Drop your sign-off line, boy.
Okay. Well, first of all, we're gonna have to talk about that.
All right. Note for David. Next time, don't do that next time.
Ever. So as always, thank you for everything, and watch more movies because movies make life better.
They do indeed.
All right.
Bye, peeps.